are talking Crocodile Island. This is a Chinese creature feature, and we've seen many of these style Chinese adventure movies with giant monsters coming out in the last few years, all of which kind of follow a relatively similar story template with people generally getting lost in a kind of particular area and being chased down by kind of giant creatures, and that is true of this movie. But let me go into a little bit more detail for you. We have a plane crash where this plane gets kind of knocked off course and ends up kind of getting running into a bunch of pterodactyls. And yes, pterodactyls crash landing on this island, which is located in the kind of like the Asian equivalent of the Bermuda Triangle. And our survivors are on the beach. However, they are menaced by saltwater crocodiles in the sea. We find out that there is also a giant crocodile living on the island and giant spiders, along with probably other creatures as well. And it's up to our group of survivors to try and evade these creatures and try and get help, with their numbers slowly dwindling as these creatures feast upon them. What will happen? Well, you're going to have to watch the movie to find out. So let's discuss. So this is, like I said, pretty much a standard Chinese style kind of monster movie. They all tend to follow more or less the same story path here. This one is no different, but it's not just that that's not an entertaining story path. It's just kind of generic in regards to not doing anything new plot wise, but nonetheless it does benefit from having some great locales here. Obviously these kind of more very exotic kind of jungle looking environments certainly lend itself to a kind of like a Lost World kind of type feel, filled with kind of like Kong Skull Island style kind of monsters and things like that. I think on a technical level, certainly with the camera work and the cinematography, this movie does do a good job of having some pretty good camera work. It gives you lots of kind of wide angle shots here. We get POV shots from the kind of the creatures coming at you, stuff like this. We have very kind of well-defined characters, and there are a couple of characters here that I kind of quite liked. We actually cast like an older guy as our main protagonist. I mean, he's not old, but he's kind of middle-aged guy as our main protagonist here, which I thought was kind of a little bit of a neat touch here. The movie's certainly kind of relatively fast-paced. As I've said, there's not just a giant crocodile here. We have giant spiders who actually take up a good portion of the movie, along with a few other things as well. Maybe what doesn't work. As I've kind of alluded to, this movie is a cut and paste plot that we've seen these type of films just do over and over. It more or less seems like they just kind of do the same film, just with different actors and a different creature. However, there actually have been quite a few of these kind of giant crocodile movies, so it really just does seem somewhat pointless in a way, because this movie doesn't really do anything different plot-wise than some of the other films, if I'm completely honest. I almost don't see why this movie needs to exist when there's so many similar films coming out from China that have practically the same story and some of the same monster as well. It just seems somewhat kind of redundant in that respect. I always struggle to sometimes judge acting when they're not speaking English, because obviously the translation I'm reading on subtitles is not necessarily how it's actually being spoken, and therefore it's kind of hard to pick up some of the kind of the emotional beats. But I've got to be honest with you, to me, even with that problem it factored in, some of the acting here didn't seem fantastic to me. It seemed quite kind of hammy in places. By far and away, the biggest complaint with these movies that come out of China, for the majority of them at least, the CGI is terrible, and it's no different here. In fact, I've got to be honest with you, this is one of the worst examples. I think the CGI in this movie is particularly bad in some instances. Our main kind of like giant crocodile, for example, seems to kind of change size, just depending on what scene they're in and kind of what it needs to eat and stuff like that. There's some kind of like really kind of like poorly rendered and poorly animated scenes with both the crocodile and these kind of like these giant spiders. Some of the plot points are just ridiculously silly. We're meant to believe that this giant crocodile was caused by dumping of nuclear materials. but it doesn't explain why there's pterodactyls there and things like this. And again, it's just a little silly. They managed to find like a radio from like a downed World War II plane, but that we're led to believe that there was also another survivor from there. But why haven't they used this radio? There's just kind of like lots of don't worry, just kind of don't worry about it. It's just a silly adventure film. Don't worry worrying about kind of logic and things like that. There's an over the top and unnecessary kind of human villain who just seems far too cartoonishly mean to be kind of any type of kind of real person. Again, it's just there to give that generic kind of human villain. Everyone who you think's going to survive will survive. Everyone who you think will die will die. It doesn't do anything new with the genre whatsoever, and is hampered by rehashing of the same plot and really kind of poor CGI. It isn't without its entertainment value. I gotta say, I think younger kids, if obviously that I'm watching a Chinese film, may be entertained by the kind of the cartoony looking monsters, and it is kind of quite fast paced. But these movies so far that I've seen from China have never been particularly impressive, and this one doesn't break that kind of that trend. So it's a 4 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.